Hi, and welcome to the Teaching Corner. Today I want to talk to you about hand strength. I was recently talking to an occupational therapist, or OT, and she was saying that there's been a surprising increase of students entering kindergarten who are not able to hold a pencil correctly. And she was talking about how sometimes with technology, with the increase of technology, where we used to have kids with utensils in their hands all the time, now they're using the pads and they're using their fingers, but it's not including that grasp that we need in order to hold a pencil. So it's not strengthening these hands. So I want to show you a couple of things that you can do as a teacher or tutor, or if you're a parent of young children, that you can do. I just went and gathered things from around my house. None of these things cost a lot of money. A lot of them you can get at the dollar store or something like that, but just things that you could do on a regular basis to help strengthen your child's hand. I do sometimes have students who come to me and their fingers sort of fall to the side, or I have one who currently points like this because he doesn't have enough strength in his finger to point like this, so he uses his thumb for support. So one of the things that we did when I was younger, every day at home or in preschool, is we would color. And of course you'd start off either with the big round crayons, or this is actually like a triangular crayon, and then we would move down to the smaller ones. As you got a little bit older, you might use markers, and the big fat markers to start with, and then the skinny markers. And then, of course, nowadays they even have these like twistable crayons. So another activity you can do with students, of course, is painting, because a paintbrush, they have to hold it and it helps with fine motor skills. Something else that you can do that, of course, lots and lots of kids love to do is just play with Play-Doh. So you can get a chunk of Play-Doh, and if you're using it as therapy to strengthen, you can actually, instead of giving them tools to roll out and cut little things out of it, just give them the Play-Doh that they have to smash and play with their hands. You can even ask them to roll a ball with one hand, like I'm doing right now, so that it works those fingers. There's actually therapists, occupational therapists will sometimes use various types of putty, which have different viscosities, so strengths of how hard it is to pull apart, and sometimes they'll hide little objects in there, so the students have to use their hands to find them out. And there's some thinking putties that are, I know you can get at the store. If I can find it, I'll put a link down below so that you can use some of those putties with older kids, because they might not want to play with Play-Doh. Another important thing to do with kids is let them cut with scissors. There's lots and lots of kids nowadays who come to school and don't have the strength in their hands to cut with paper. So one thing I used to do when my boys were little was put a splat mat on the floor. You could just, you know, do a big large piece of plastic or something like that, and give them old newspapers and just let them cut, and that opening and closing of the scissors strengthens this. It doesn't have to be cutting on lines, it could just be cutting up pieces of paper, making confetti, and then you can gather all of that up and throw that in the recycling bin. If you're doing it more therapeutically as a tutor or a teacher, if you have kids at school, another thing you can do is stringing beads. I didn't actually have the little wooden beads that you would use in like the preschool setting, so this is really for a block, but you know, you can string them. If they aren't able to do it on string, then you can use something like a pipe cleaner, and because it's stiffer, it's easier to thread, and then they can thread multiple ones. And then as they get better at that, of course, you would just do it on a piece of string, which I didn't have, so I'm just using this necklace, but you know, they can string it. A great thing for older kids is those little pony beads, and they can make necklaces and bracelets on string. You can, if the string is too hard for them to get through, you can always put a bit of glue on the end to make it more like a shoestring, so it's a little harder, and then they're able to push it through. Another great activity you can do with kids, and I use this often as a tutor, is these little stress balls, and the kids can just squeeze them. Something else I do with one of my students is as we walk down the hall, I'll squeeze his hand and he has to count the number of times I've squeezed it, 1, 2, 3, and then he squeezes my hand back, and I always try to do it with the hand that he writes with. Something else that was fun when I taught preschool, and I didn't have the right kind of tongs, but like I said, I wasn't spending any money on this video. I just got what was around my house. But if you have those metal tongs that have like the circles at the end, I would get Easter eggs and put a carton on one side of the room and then another carton on the other side, and they would do relay races. They would go grab an egg from one carton and put it in the other carton, because again, this motion right here is strengthening the hand right here. Someone else told me when I was teaching preschool about using tweezers, and you can get those little bitty erasers like at the dollar store and have them in a pile, and they grab the erasers and move them from one area to another, again strengthening here. When my son did occupational therapy, one thing that they had him do is on the table, they would have him pick up various sizes of coins and do it single-handed. So they have to use their pincher grasp and then hold it in the rest of their hand. So they're pinching the money and then holding it in the rest of their hand. So it requires them to use these fingers as well. When it's on a flat surface, for some kids, that's really, really difficult. So that's a good activity to play with the money transfer so that they can strengthen those hands. Another thing that he would do in therapy was bolts, nuts and bolts. This happens to be out of a plastic play set that a building set that my boys have, but it works on that fine motor, and you can have them do it on one side and then flip it around so that the other hand is getting strengthened as well. When I was doing it as a tutor in a therapy session, I had a therapist who wanted me to get various types of clips for the student, and the student would then open and close the clip however many number of times the therapist had asked me to do it, and then also doing it with each finger to strengthen each finger. And of course, as you go, oftentimes they'd want to put 2 fingers on because it gets hard, but encourage them just to use that one finger to strengthen it. And you really even feel this down in your wrist as you're doing it. But various different kinds of clips are going to give you different amounts of resistance as the student is practicing that. If you have younger kids, simply using clothespins is a wonderful idea. When I had preschool class, I stretched a clothespin across the room, and then during different times of the year, like when it was warmer, I would have them clothespin actually close. In the winter, I had coffee filters, and I wrote the ABCs on them, and they would clothespin those in order. You could do numbers, you could do different families, the at family and the and family or whatever, and they could make different words depending on the age of the kids. You could do various colors, but just doing that along there helps strengthen these muscles in here that students need to write. Another thing that you can do too is getting rubber bands and putting it around their fingers and just having them open and close their hands to strengthen those. And finally, one cute thing, and I'll put a link down below. When I purchased this, it was called the Scatterpillar Scramble. Now it's called like the Wiggly Giggly, but it looks like a little caterpillar. I'll see if I can, whoops. It looks like a little caterpillar. I'll see if I can hold it up. And it comes with these little tongs like this, and this guy is wiggling around when you have him on, and the kids have to pick up their ball and then place it on his little hands, which I don't know if I can do because it's not on a flat surface. There we go. And it goes up, and whoever gets their hands completely filled first wins. But again, it's using that little pincher grasp. So you can make games out of this. You can do fun little things. So it doesn't quote unquote feel like therapy. If your child is receiving occupational therapy from an occupational therapist, you can always ask them for additional ideas. But I hope this was helpful. If it was, please like, share, and subscribe. Share it with your friends, and I'll see you later. Bye.